Hey guys, it's Dr. Bickling from Own It Dental. As always, here's my contact information if you need to get a hold of me. If you guys are enjoying these videos, please do hit that thumbs up button. It's right down below. It's right there. It only takes you a second, and it lets me know how good you think these videos are. Speaking of how good things are, today we're going to talk about how good your associates are. Some of them might be better than you think, and some of them might be worse. So let's dig into it. All right, so today we're going to talk about how good your associates are. And let me grab my pointer here. If your associate's holding a drill like this, maybe they're not too good. As many of you know, I've hired and trained well over 100 associates in my career. And I'd say that 80 to 90% of them were quite a chore. But today we want to talk about how good are they? And the word good is a little bit subjective. So today I'm going to give you some ideas of how to have an objective measurement of how good your associates are. So here we go. As you know me, when I'm talking about things, I'd like to have objective data. I like to have things that are measurable. So when I'm talking about how good an associate is, what are some of the measurable things that we can do to see how good they are? Well, first you want to sit down and you want to think, what are the things that are important to you as the business owner? Now I'm going to give you the things that I thought were important to me, and feel free to steal some of these. But if there's other ideas that are important to you and how good your associates are, then feel free to use them. The important thing is that you have to be able to measure it, and you have to be able to track it on a certain time interval. All right, so the things that were important to me were obviously productivity. You want to make sure that your doctors are producing. I'll get into that in just a little bit. I also want to make sure that they have good quality work. I'll talk to you about how we measured that. I want to make sure that our doctors are likable, not only to the patients, but also to the staff. So I would tell you probably pick 4 or 5 different categories to rate your doctors on, and then you should measure their performance in these, either on a monthly or a quarterly basis. So let's go through each one of these. So first of all, productivity. As many of you know, it's important that your doctors are producing. Whether you're tracking their production or their collections, that's up to you, or both, that's up to you. But, I've kind of done the math, and for a full-time associate to really pay for themselves in a dental practice, they have to be able to collect somewhere around $45,000, $50,000 a month. Anything below that and they're losing money. Once you start paying for their assistants, the hygienist, the front desk, paying the doctors, paying for the equipment and the supplies. So it's about that $40,000, maybe $45,000, $50,000 a month is about that cutoff between where they're breaking even and becoming profitable. But I've had a lot of doctors that were really would make a lot of money, but they were just running through patients. So not only do we want to know what their total monthly production and collections is, but we should also know what their production and collections is per hygiene exam. From my clients, on average, the average collections per hygiene exam is somewhere around $500. And my office it was up closer to about $700 or $800. No matter where it is in your office, it could vary. But you may find that some doctors are collecting $300 for every exam that they do. And some are collecting $800 or $900 or $1,000 for every hygiene exam they do, or even more. Mine was, closer to $2,200. And today I'm working part-time, 2 days a week, and I'm up around $1,600 in collections per hygiene exam. So what you need to do is you need to find out what is the standard for your office, and maybe you have some that are producing less than that. Maybe their monthly collections or production's really high, but they're just burning through a lot of patients, and their average collections on a per patient basis is low. So this is a good thing to know, not only the total monthly collections and production, but also how much they're producing and collecting on a per hygiene exam basis. That's one of the ways I would rate their doctors' productivity. Quality of care. Of course, we want our doctors to do great work. One of the ways I measured their quality of care, because the word quality can be a little subjective, one of the ways I measured their quality of care is with their lab redos. Now, lab redos can because of a lot of reasons, and maybe the lab screwed up. But one of the things I found is, a lot of times there's a lab redo. It's because of garbage in equals garbage out. if the associates is making the lab's job difficult, then it's going to be more likely that there's going to be a redo. So I'll measure all of the lab redos that a doctor might have in a month. And even if it's a lab problem, at least this is alerting me to the problem. So it's either going to be a lab problem or it's going to be a doctor problem. And as long as I'm tracking the lab redos and I'm attributing them to which doctor it is, I can at least do a deep dive into that situation and see what's going on. If it's a lab issue, I can handle that. Or if it's a doctor issue, we can handle that. And that might give us good measurement on the quality of the doctor. Do they stay on time? And do they take forever to do procedures? Time doesn't really exactly have to do with quality. However, it does have to do with quality of service, because patients don't want to sit in the chair for 3 hours just to get a crown done. So are they doing 45 minutes to do a crown prep, or are they doing the 5-minute crown prep that I taught you in that previous video? Are the doctors running on time? Are they staying on time? If a patient is taking their time out of their day to come see you at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, we should respect their time and we should run on time too. So that's another thing that we can measure is, do the doctors run on time, and how long does it take for them to do a procedure? And then I would also do daily chart audits. I would pick 3 or 4 charts per doctor per day. And then I would just first I'd look at the notes and I'd say, were the notes completed? Did the notes make sense? Did they all have all the subjective and objective data? Did the diagnosis agree with that? Did the treatment agree with the diagnosis? Were the notes signed? Then I'd look at radiographs. If there was a crown inserted, I'd look at the post-op X-ray. Did the crown fit? If it was a root canal, I'd look at the post-op X-ray of the root canal. Was it obturated properly? And although these might be yes or no questions, yes or no is still an objective measurement. So these are ways that I would use to measure the quality of our doctors. Likability, our doctors have to be likable. Even if they're not most productive doctor in the world, I still want them to be likable. I want the patients to like them. I used an app called NextHealth, which would send out patients surveys via text every day and basically just rate your service 1 through 5. And I would get a dozen or more of these every day. So I would come up with a representative sample of how well our doctors were treating our patients and how much the patients liked our doctors, on a scale from 1 to 5 stars. And I made a goal of it had to be 4.8 stars or better. And anything that was 3 stars or less, I would look into. So I wanted to make sure our doctors were likable to the patients. I also wanted to make sure they were likable to the staff. About once a quarter or maybe twice a year, I would do a 360-degree review. I basically would just have a little survey or a little questionnaire that I'd send out to all the staff, asking questions about the doctor. How would you rate the doctor on a scale from 1 to 10 in terms of likability, in terms of patient communication, and so on and so forth. I do this maybe once or twice a year, and just to see how the staff was liking the doctor. And then what I would do is I'd kind of put it all together, and I'd have a scorecard for the doctor, 25% on productivity, 25% on quality, and then 25% on likability and staff, and then they'd have a total score, and you can come up with your own methods of how you want to, weight these or how you want to score these, but I'd have a score, and I'd give my doctors an objective score. I'd give them a grade, and I'd probably do this about once a quarter. And, so at least our doctors knew how they were being rated, how they were being, how their quality was, and their productivity, what their expectations were. So once a quarter, I'd sit down with my doctors and I'd go over this with them, and of course, set down, these are my goals, these are my expectations, and this is where we'd like you to be. And this is what we can do to help you get there. So. In any case, when you guys are dealing with your doctors, I've found that how I feel about a doctor is really kind of irrelevant, to how good they are. Because maybe the staff likes them, maybe the patients like them, or conversely, maybe I don't like them whatsoever, but they're producing a lot of money, And so, there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're rating your doctors. But what I would recommend is have some type of an objective measurement and put some goals in place for meeting those objective measurements, and meet with your doctors at least once a quarter, maybe once every 6 months, to kind of give them an idea as to where they stand and what your expectations are. So again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Dr. Bickling. Here is my contact information, and I'll see you in the next video. Talk to you soon. Bye. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like it, go to ownitdental.com or click the link above and check out my services. I have dozens of hours of training videos and have negotiated reduced lab fees for all my clients. So if you want to get out of the dental chair and start owning your business, go to ownitdental.com and check out my services, and I'll see you soon.